You're listening to Raising the Crates on DC Radio as we celebrate the station's 4th anniversary. And I'm proud to introduce our next guest, who is an author, a politician, an activist for jazz music, and one heck of a performer with a great stage presence. Crate Raiders, let's welcome Mr. Aaron Myers.
Thank you for having me.
Aaron, it's been a pleasure getting to know you and getting to know your music. I want to know, how does a good old country boy, piano-playing country boy from Goodloe, Texas, find himself in the political atmosphere of Washington, D.C.?
I would say it was by chance in a sense. I think the ancestors must have had something to do with it. In doing my genealogy this past summer, I discovered that my 4th great-grandfather testified before the United States Senate in 1880, before the Voorhees Committee, examining why Blacks were leaving the South. So it had to be in the cards that I had to come back here to finish up whatever business he had left unfinished, I would say. I came here in 2008 as the national director of the Global Family Program after working as a field organizer on the Barack Obama campaign. Mind you, I only worked on the Barack Obama campaign so that I could tell my grandchildren that I was a part. I didn't sit on the sidelines of history. I actually worked and was a part of that history-making campaign in '08. And I had left entertainment to offer my services to the campaign. But I grew up in a family that was really right with public service to a degree, at least. I mean, ranging from, and you may remember years ago when the NAACP really was a force in the Black community. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, my family members were either president, secretary, events committee. The first public performance I think I ever did outside of a church was for the NAACP years ago. And so I remember the first march I witnessed was when they were marching to remove the Confederate flag from above our courthouse years ago. And so, I mean, I've always been adjacent, very near public service and politics, and my art has always really opened the door so that it could assist, aid to some degree, whatever the movement was needed at that time. So yeah, that's how I ended up here. John Conyers and Linda Grover. Both now, it's odd to say, both now are deceased, but they asked if I would come here, and I was only supposed to be here for a week. And I came only with 1 week's worth of clothes. And so everything else that I've acquired clothes-wise has been based off of a week foundation, a week's foundation. So that was a pretty solid foundation, if you ask me.
Look at what God will do.
God will tell you.
Where he needs you at.
So now, yeah, but that's what brought me here.
He did. And as you in your book, BI, The Way, Tall Tales and Lessons Learned, you went from, let's take a little bit of trip. You went from your hometown to the Army, and then you came back to Navarro College in Corsicana. Is it Corsicana?
Corsicana,
Texas. All right. I take my Tennessee
It's all right.
Well, you actually ran for mayor there.
I did.
Then you were off to L.A., where, well, all things I found interesting, that you tried your hand at stand-up comedy at the Comedy Store.
Absolutely. I did comedy, and I still try to incorporate comedy in my live performances to a degree now.
You do.
But that was the first show I saw at the Comedy Store was in 2004, and it was a comedian by the name of Sebastian was there.
I remember.
And as I was sitting there, I just knew, I said, I can do that. That's something that I can do. I had only seen, like, you know, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy on a screen. I had never been to an in-person comedy show. And I was majoring in theater at the time. And I knew that the opportunities to be on stage would be far and in between coming fresh to a new city. And being on stage doing comedy was the quickest way for me to at least be on the boards, for me to at least be on stage of some sort. And so when I decided that I would do comedy, I went back to the Corsicana to get everything packed, and I put together my own little routine. And as soon as I got back to LA, I went to the comedy store, and you used to only get 3 minutes for open mic, and that act I ran through it, not accounting for applause or laughter, and it only was a minute and a half. And I literally said, out of just frustration, I said, this is the longest 3 minutes of my life. And everyone just fell out laughing. And then I allowed myself to come out for the next minute and a half. And it was that next minute and a half that showed me how I could approach and accomplish this thing. And from there, at least weekly, I could be on stage 2 to 3 times a night.
Yeah. When I recently saw you a few weeks ago, it was just as captivating and funny. I mean, you probably could have just not even sang and just talked, and the
Thank
crowd
you.
would have loved you because you were so open and honest and and hilarious. Now,
Thank
since
you.
arriving in DC and you started recording, you started in 2013. You recorded since then four albums, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
The
4
first one
albums.
was Leo Rising.
Hmm.
The second one was the holiday album, Snowing in Vegas.
Same year. The second was The Lion's Den.
The
And
Lions
then
Den.
the
Okay.
third one
Now,
was the holiday album.
iTunes lists the Lions Den as later, but it must have
Hmm.
been a revision that they were listing.
Exactly. For some reason, when I was in Russia, my I don't know, some communication, that second album was pulled off, and they then discovered that I did a remake of Spain by
Hmm.
Chick Corea,
Yes.
and I had all of my permissions, I had all of the paperwork, this, that, and the third, and for some reason on their end, they got a not a complaint, but they got an inquiry, and that from that inquiry, they took the whole thing down and then realized they'd made a mistake. And so I just reissued the tracks myself independently, and it was the revision. So that's why. That's the reason why that's listed that way.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'll call iTunes and tell them to get it right.
Please, thank you, because it's been it was confusing because the entire tour in Russia, we were doing the music from that album,
Mhm.
believe it or not, and it was selling. And then one day I was here, I said, "What happened? What's going on?" And they're like, "Well, there's a question." I said, "Well, here's your paperwork." They're like, "Oh, well, you're good to go. Just go ahead and put them back out." I'm like, "Oh, at my cost. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Just take my money. It's fine."
Take all of it. We talked about the holiday album, Snowing in Vegas,
Yes.
which contained one of my favorite Christmas songs,
Oh,
Love All Year. You came here in the studio at OCTFME, and you performed that song. I had never heard that song before, and I just could not hear it enough. I went
thank
home
you.
that day and I purchased that album and I played that song over and over again. And I just
Oh.
started raiding the crates that year, and I played that song in the show, and I played it the next year. It's something about your writing sometimes that just really hooks me into a song, and I can't let it go. It's just that you are like this album, the Pride album. There's a lot of stuff. There's a Broadway on there. There's gospel. There's jazz. There's pop. There's a lot of stuff that I personally am about. I listen to everything. I like country. I like classical. I like everything. And it was that album for me this year that I thought encompassed all of the stuff that I liked about music so much um, that
Well, I thank you for that.
I know for me, we go right to the Pride album. It is a Oh, and I listen to a lot of new music. I buy albums. I'm on iTunes every Friday buying all the new
Right.
stuff and listening to all the new stuff. And it is this year's is one of the most important social albums of this year. It just is so it encompasses so much in the album as to what's going on in the communities and the world and and um and during the pandemic. What was your inspiration for the Pride album?
The Pride album came out of a bit of desperation because around when the shutdown happened in March, April, May, going into June, as things were starting to happen in a sense, I was seeing a psychologist, therapist, psychologist, and counselor. I had health anxiety had gone through the roof. I had an unreasonable fear of death, and I just could not sleep. I couldn't do anything. Now, everyone, of course, had anxiety and was worried. And I went through the Creative Affairs Office through their program at
Mhm.
GW with the solution-based therapy. And I wanted to try that since nothing else seemed to be working. And I discovered that I had forgotten how to rehearse. I had forgotten that uh, for the last 10, 15 years at least, all of my rehearsals were centered around an upcoming project or an upcoming show or church or something, not me to hear what I sounded like anymore. And I also discovered through that therapy that the audience played a huge part of my mental health as far as being able to use that music to be able to sing through, to perform through. Maya Angelou told the story about when her son had his accident in Africa, and as an older Black woman told her someone needs to watch you cry without trying to console you, but to watch you cry, to watch you go through that process. You need to be okay with that, vulnerable enough for that. And the stage offers that type of vulnerability to me that had been just taken away. So here I was trying to process the loss of family and friends and the pandemic, not knowing and uncertain about so much, and still wanting to inspire people, but yet no audience there to help me sing through it. And so once we learned and we developed a strategy of how I could approach the piano again, my voice came out. And all of the things that I was concerned about and all the things that I drew strength from, I feel came out through this album. So where I may have felt anxiety, fear, uncertainty, I felt that this album showed it. The problems I had in love and trying to sustain a relationship, that was there on this album. But the areas of hope and remembering my family, that was there. And the ancestors, that was present on the album. And then I hoped that the album would give someone some encouragement to use their voice to some degree, to not be frightened to be heard, and reminding someone their importance of being heard. And I wanted that album to speak completely from my voice. I did not want to try to do a Nat King Cole tribute or something. No, in this moment, I needed to be heard. And it was purely because of that therapy. I was able to kind of find my voice again, and I was all the better for it. And putting the album out, unlike when I put out my other albums, it was the first time where once the midnight happened and it was time for me for that to happen, I had no sense of hesitancy or any reservations. It was like I was ready to open the gate, let the birds fly out, let it go, because I needed someone out there who it may be one out of the billions of people on this earth, who could resonate with what I had felt and was going through. And possibly the music would let someone know that they are not alone. You are not alone in being frightened, unsure, feeling lonely. You're not alone in trying to figure out what you're going to do with love. You're not alone in thinking about those old songs your grandparents used to do. You're not alone to being encouraged through the stage and through theater. You're not alone in trying to encourage your friends to stay the course and to get protected and get vaccinated and things of that nature. You're not alone remembering and being proud of where you come from and being proud of your Blackness and telling the story of where you felt frustrated. You're not alone in these things. And that's what I wanted this album to really
Now,
convey.
there are three songs on this album that captivated me. First of
Okay.
all, I've told you when I saw you in concert, that song, "Please Take Care of You for Me," touched me. I'm almost got tears in my eyes. It
Mm.
touched me so deeply when I heard it. I mean, once I downloaded it, I must have played it like 10 times back to back because it was just bringing out all these emotions in me. Tell me where that song came from.
It came from a dear friend of mine. Her name was Carolyn Colbert. And Carolyn worked AV at my church. And naturally, she and I were together, ironically, through a lot of funerals, because during the week you have to do funerals. And we saw some disasters happen. I mean, some. I always tell people, you learn a person by the way they grieve. I've seen people so overcome by grief that they would try to smoke a cigarette in the church, or weed, or pull out some liquor, fall out. I mean, everything. And there were some days when we would leave there, we felt that the person who was being honored and being remembered sometimes was done a disservice because there was a lack of preparation or care or attention to care given to him. Well, before I left for Russia for my tour, Carolyn approached me and told me that she had been given a prognosis of 6 months to live. And at the moment of that conversation, the prognosis had been given to her 3 months ago. So we're looking at 3 months left. And she said she wasn't scared, she wasn't worried, but she wanted me and her to work along with her wife to ensure that her final farewell service, homegoing service, was put together, was spectacular, musically was sound, everything was as tight as it needed to be. And her parting words to me were to please take care of you for me. And her wife would always say that I will take care of me for you. And as this pandemic was coming on, and I was looking at the things with George Floyd, and I would see the protesters going out, and I would see people going out to work, I would think, well, what do I tell them? What can I tell them? Yes, you're looking at the news, it seems like nothing's good there. I don't know what else I can do to help. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to please take care of you for me. And I'll do my part. I'll take care of me for you. And if we can just hold on, love will see us through this whole situation. And I believe that. And that's where that song came from.
Well, you got me believing that.
I hope so.
Good old preacher, preach, brother, preach. Also, there are a couple of two more powerful songs for me. Obviously, New Jim Crow.
Yes.
What a song! And
Yes.
then Don't Ask, which is soft, but when you hear it, it's got a punch. Tell me about those two songs.
New Jim Crow, and literally, I was watching. I might have been Nightline. And as the gentleman was giving the setup for the show that he was about to talk about, I was visually seeing, when it says actor's portrayal, and of the guy being pulled over and this, that, and the other. And I thought about, like, we as people of color have watched actors portray our demise, our imminent danger, our worst nightmare, night after night after night. Every Black parent knows that they're frightened of that 4 o'clock call in the morning, the 4 a.m. call. Is so-and-so your son? I know as a kid growing up, the biggest trauma that therapy has helped me bring out is that my mother had a routine. I would watch her go to work. She'd be home by 6:30, dinner, this, that, and the other. But when mother worked with the NAACP, sometimes she wouldn't get home till 9. And I was always scared and worried that something happened to her, and I didn't know what was going on. So I thought about the new Jim Crow, and I thought about Nina Simone. She always said that she wanted the song Mississippi Goddamn to be a musical type of thing, to kind of display the atrocities happening down there in Mississippi. So I thought about it, I said, well, what if I could visually lay out and tell the story of the scenario of what Black people feel is going to happen when we get pulled over by the police? What if I could just tell that story and tell it in a way and musically present it in a way where it comes across non-threatening? You want to listen, you want to follow the song like Mac the Knife. You want to follow the song to hear how that song plays out. And it's always when we get to the free section, when all the musicians and the instruments go crazy, that represents the chaos of that moment. The chaos, different people crying out for help. The police officer that's pulled his trigger, who now knows that his career may be over, that he may have taken a life, the craziness there. The person who did nothing and did not deserve to be shot, and sometimes did not deserve to be pulled over in the first place. And then the cars that still are going past, who don't want to get involved because they have an appointment. they need to get to, or they are Black too, and they don't want to deal with that over there. They want to jeopardize their own safety. And then when the music comes back in, it comes back in an accelerated pace to represent that
Mhm.
adrenaline of the moment. Now, don't ask. That don't ask meant to think about somewhere over the rainbow,
Mhm.
somewhere over. Sometimes I wish upon a star and da 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 da, that kind of thing. It was meant to take that peace, that hopefulness, understanding that for us there is no over the rainbow. There's no pot of gold on the other end. It's rain. The rain has not subsided enough for there to be a rainbow. And I am tired, and I became really sick and tired of people asking me, "Oh, just smile. Why do you have a frown? No, just smile. Oh, you should smile more. Oh, you have such a beautiful smile. You should smile. Something wrong? Well, smile then. No, something is wrong. And today I don't feel like smiling, and I would rather you don't ask me to smile because you shouldn't be smiling either. There's nothing to smile about. And in my book, I write that smiles have often been used to disguise,
Mhm.
to mask. And Maya Angelou wrote the poem, we wear the mask. And I'm tired of being forced to use that mask as my uniform to go out. I should not be required to put on a fake smile when truly I'm hurting. Truly I'm sad. I'm devastated that right now in the District of Columbia, some mother is dealing with her son or daughter that's gone now due to gun violence. I'm hurting that some child now is grieving the loss of a parent because they didn't trust healthcare enough to get a vaccine. And I'm very, very, very upset that so many people here in this country, when they could be living to the maximum of their potential, could be doing so many awesome things. The systemic racism when it comes to housing, banking, jobs, medicine, the whole nine is stacked against them. And to put icing on that cake, those who are sworn to protect us often are the biggest perpetuators of our danger. I mean, I can't smile. And some days I would rather not be asked to.
That that song is powerful. And I intake all of that. And but we could go all day long. Let me go a little bit more. I want to tell the folks that I often don't promote albums, but this one is really really good when you get to the core. There's not only the quote protest kind of songs. There are some beautiful love ballads on here. There's some Broadway, and Lord knows there's some gospel on here that comes from air and soul that you are just going to love. So I tell everybody, if you get a chance, go out and get it. And I'm looking forward to maybe some Grammy nominations, possibly.
I
Can we
tell
speak of
you,
that?
we have submitted for 8 categories for the Grammys, which I am excited about. Our categories that I'm most hopeful for is jazz vocal album,
Mhm.
and so we've submitted for that. Album of the year, best new artist, album notes. We've submitted Michael J. West, right here from the DMV, for album notes. Engineered album, non-classical. Producer of the year, non-classical. Improvised jazz solo by Dana Hawkins, who also lives here, and then best music film. I encourage people to go on YouTube, type in Pride Album official video. You'll see the music film of the visual album of this work. But if you are a Grammy voter, I have submitted, and I hope that you would consider Aaron Myers and the Pride album when you are casting your vote, especially for jazz vocal album.
I second that totally. Aaron, you talked earlier about touring in Russia before the pandemic, and then we had the pandemic hit. You are now back on stage. How does that feel back on stage after about a year and a half off?
Well, I didn't believe when I did. I was the first one to do Blues Alley in front
Mhm.
of a live audience,
Yes.
and you can't believe it's real. Um, it's the feeling of not wanting something ever to be taken away again. When you've lost something and you finally find it, and you're like, oh, I just can't lose you again. And the first time I was frightened to get really embraced in it because I didn't know if I would if this was this just a fluke of some sort. Um, Being on stage and performing again is healing. It is um, it's empowering, definitely. I think, but most of all, it has allowed me to bathe in gratitude because anytime people, in the past would use money from their hard-earned money and time from their paychecks to come out and see your art and to experience your art with you, one was grateful. But anytime someone says that I'm going to put on a mask and I'm going to chance it tonight because anything can happen between now and when I get home, and this could be my last show. I want to spend it with you. Oh, the gratitude is just overwhelming. I am overwhelmingly grateful to be on stage. And I hope my audience, when they're in front of me, feels that gratitude because I am grateful for each and every one of them.
Well, Aaron, we are so grateful for you joining us today and supporting the DC Radio on its 4th anniversary.